afternoon. I think I represent roughly the halfway point, and you've probably spent 2 days listening to lots of people talking about really, high-end technology, data, programmatic. I was just looking at some of these tweets here, and it's just full of buzzwords. So what I'm going to try and do is not actually do that. And I thought what I was going to do is just use my 10 minutes to really provide a little bit of clarity in terms of, what is all this programmatic? What is RTB? What is machine learning? Really actually go back to basics. And I hope that kind of gives it some perspective, because I spend a lot of time talking to people, and all I ever talk about is acronyms. But sometimes actually you don't step back and you think, well, do people understand these acronyms? So as I said, over the next few minutes, what I want to do is just try and bring some perspective as to what we mean by programmatic, what we mean by machine learning, RTB, and how it all comes together. So as you can see, the first real challenge for me when I kind of put this deck together was, what actually is programmatic? And I sifted through endless amount of research, and some of the definitions were quite mind-boggling. I mean, way, way beyond me. But I think one of the best definitions of programmatic was the fact that it's a machine making a decision, not a person. So where does that kind of take us? I think everyone talks about programmatic in the last 2 years. There's been a real hype. But as kind of Tom alluded to earlier, I've been in this space quite a long time, and I can go back to 2004 when we were already using programmatic. We were using programmatic, at the infancy of when we were selling behavioral, we were selling audience. And what programmatic allowed us to do was actually to take, large amounts of data, process it very quickly, and put it into silos that we could actually target against. So the key point is that, yes, programmatic has been around, but it's also evolved because technology has evolved, and we've been able to actually, process data much quicker. I mean, if you go back to 2004, it was very, very difficult to process, what is now a terabyte of data. Nowadays, I think people can do it in their sleep. But what's interesting about the evolution of programmatic is, fast forward to 2009, when we started to see the advent of exchanges, we started to see the launch of supply-side partners, and this whole point of RTB. And I think that's where programmatic really came, to be itself. When you're talking about data, again, I've been seeing some of these tweets talking about data. Yeah, data is the currency. Data is kind of what makes this tick. But it's programmatic that actually allows us to be able to actually pull all of this data together, put it into bite-sized chunks, and actually make it actionable. So, where does it work best? I'm sure you're all familiar with, our good friend, the sales funnel, the top to the bottom. And in reality, programmatic now works across all elements of the sales funnel, from prospecting to lookalike to retargeting. I think the one key point that we must, realize is that as much as it works across all points, it's used in a different way. But one of the things that I really want to emphasize is that, programmatic on its own doesn't really leverage the benefit of what we have. A lot of programmatic can do a lot of things that makes life very simple for humans. And when I talk about humans, I talk about the analysts, I talk about the optimizers, the traffickers, people managing and optimizing. But I think it's important to understand that programmatic isn't a solution where you just load something into a system, press a button, and eureka, you get everything you need to at the end of the day. A big part of what we do now is, the human element working in conjunction with the machine learning elements. So what I was going to do is just take, two components of that sales funnel and actually try and give you a feel of, how programmatic works and what the kind of ingredients required to actually make it all come together. So when you look at, I think, the top of the funnel, which is your prospecting and lookalike, there are really two key elements that are fundamental in building profiles, in building lookalikes, whatever it is that you're looking at. And one is the ability to process lots of data in terms of a data management piece. And the other is, what we would call a demand-side platform. That's kind of the RTB. So in this piece, what you're seeing is, two key ingredients, the data being crunched in a programmatic way and fed into the DSP, which is using your real-time element to actually optimize, buy, and deliver against the credentials. So again, if we look at the element of programmatic, programmatic brings it all together. It takes the data, it puts it into silos, it allows the system to make smart decisions. But on top of all of that, you've still got the human element that's actually looking for additional opportunities to optimize, additional ways of looking at trends, and ways that it can actually function much better. It would be a bit remiss of me to actually also make the point about, what are the pitfalls of programmatic? And the one thing we need to, understand and be very realistic about is that, programmatic is a very linear way of doing something. It's very difficult, for a machine to actually distinguish between, good clicks, good sites, bad sites. So I think one of the points where as much opportunities that we get from programmatic, there are elements where the programmatic just can't do it, and human is important. When we look at retargeting, you've got a similar situation, but the way that programmatic is used is very, very different. I mean, with retargeting, your key ingredient is, a very large retargeting pool. And how do you build that retargeting pool? Search, affiliate, all of the key channels to driving, traffic to your landing page. That's kind of what determines the opportunity to actually use programmatic to get your retargeting sorted. What's important about retargeting is that the system doesn't have to actually make too many smart, predictive decisions. It's a very linear, always-on process. So the idea is that, yes, it can be very, very efficient, and I would say retargeting and programmatic isn't too far akin from search. But at the same time, there are pitfalls that we need to look after. And I think, it would come back to some of my colleagues here talking about publisher solutions, how publishers work. You've got to always remember that a machine, isn't the best placed person, or no, I wouldn't say person, it's a machine, but is not best placed to actually distinguish between what is a good page, what is a bad page, what's good content, what isn't good content. So in the kind of scheme of everything, programmatic does a lot of what I call the heavy lifting, but you always will need some form of human element to give you that kind of overarching opportunity to either extract greater efficiency or greater protection. I'm doing quite well. I've got 2 minutes, and I'm nearly there. So what I wanted to just close off is really some of the risks and pitfalls, kind of bring together what I've just been talking about over the last 6 or 7 minutes. Programmatic undoubtedly has changed the way that we buy digital, we optimize, and the way that we plan. But I still think there's a lot of elements that you need to look after. And these are just some of the ones that I would vouch against. You can't rely on machine for everything. It's very, very important that you have a skilled team of individuals that can monitor what the machine is doing, but at the same time give it that human element where it can provide some form of overarching comfort. You need to find good quality data. I think we touched on data earlier, but data is the lifeblood. But like everything, there's good data, there's bad data. A machine can only work with the data it has, as can a manual optimizer. My point in the top right, many myths lead to misunderstanding. I think that really applies to everything. But again, what I wanted to do and what I wanted to use these few minutes for is just to say that programmatic isn't the only piece of the jigsaw. It's just one piece of the jigsaw. We can look at inventory. It's interesting, and I think Tom pointed out earlier, and there'll probably be some other people talking about the inventory side. But it is a misconception that programmatic and RTB, is where you can buy everything you need. Absolutely not. You still have to go through the traditional channels of sourcing your publishers, sourcing your contextually relevant areas, and programmatic stroke RTB is not the answer of everything. And as we know, RTB stroke programmatic, there is that element of lacking flexibility when it comes to creative. So I'd like to kind of wrap up and just say, well, where are we going? What do I think, are the key drivers of the next 12 months? And I make the point 12 months, but there's no doubt that data is the new oil. I think what programmatic allows us to do is use that data more efficiently and extract much, much better efficiencies from it. But I think, three things to take away, and I'm sure these points will probably be covered sometime between now and next year. There is an ongoing number of new enablers that are coming to the market that actually is allowing now programmatic and RTB to be more efficient. There's obviously more investment needed in terms of finding people that understand the data. And I think, again, it'll be something we touch on, but transparency is becoming a big, big talking point. Programmatic is great, but you do need transparency. In the days of working with, closed black boxes, I think we will see, soon being days, gone past. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to taking questions.